Good morning to you. We are from, Barbara and I are from the South. We came up here to escape the heat. We failed. My children who live, one in Minnesota, the other in Michigan, always brag about how cool it is in the spring and summer. And I thought, this is going to be great. I understand you're having one of the warmest days you've had all year long, and probably one of the warmest days you're going to have in a while. And I thought, yeah, you lied to me. I'm extremely hot-natured, so when I find a place where I can get cool. In Memphis, we only have 2 seasons, just like y'all do, except we don't have spring. We call it pre-summer. And it just gets hot early, and it just stays hot for the next lifetime. And so it is good to be with you. I appreciate so much the invitation to come and spend the weekend with you and to share some thoughts with you. I want to share, as we conclude our time together this weekend, from John chapter 14. And this text is very special because it's about marriage. And we don't necessarily see it. And the reason we don't see it is because we're not Jewish. And it's okay that we don't necessarily see it. I've heard all kinds of sermons based upon this text, and I have no problem with any of them. But I think there's a richer, deeper meaning to this text than what we often understand. I've used this text at funerals. I thought I needed to use this text at a few weddings. Oh, well, yeah, I'm fond humor in that. When you start in Genesis, you have, amongst the great creation of God, you have at the very heart of that, at the end of chapter 2, the beginning of a relationship we call marriage. God presenting the newly formed woman from the side of Adam to him as his bride, as his wife. And he pronounces, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And here we have the initiation at the pinnacle of creation, this relationship that we call marriage. Then you go all the way to the end of the Bible in Revelation 21. And in Revelation 21, you have this image of the New Jerusalem coming down out of the heavens. And John writes that he describes it as a bride adorned for her husband. You have marriage at the beginning, you have marriage at the end. It's almost like God is trying to give us a big parenthesis around all of Scripture that says, pay attention, marriage matters to me. Of all the physical relationships that I could use to describe how I want you to view the relationship that you're going to have with me, it's going to be marriage. Now, that doesn't mean that God says everyone must be married. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he talks about singleness and the merits. In fact, the preference of singleness to marriage. We'll not get into that. But the idea is not that everyone must get married, but if there is a physical way for God to demonstrate how he views the relationship between us and him, it would be marriage. We looked at Ephesians chapter 5 on Friday night. And he talks about how this marriage is a physical representation of the relationship between Christ and the church. So now we come to John chapter 14. And it is a marriage text. But let's put it in context. Starting in John chapter 13, Jesus and his disciples go up to an upper room. And in that upper room, they're going to celebrate the Passover. It is time for Jesus to die. It is time for him to become the Lamb. It is time for him, as Israel is remembering God's deliverance from Egypt, and that celebration that's been going on for centuries, it is now time for that celebration to be here. But Jesus is going to become the Lamb. And he will announce himself that way. John the Baptist did that early on. Behold, there's the Lamb of God. And Jesus will announce himself that way, that he's the Lamb. The lamb for the Passover was to be killed at a certain time. Guess what time Jesus was crucified? He's the Lamb. So what Jesus in this upper room, John chapter 13, the first thing that he does, as you know this story, is he takes a basin of water and he washes all the disciples' feet. We could spend some time talking about that, but let's just say at the outset that his taking that basin of water, washing disciples' feet, left them all a bit uncomfortable. Would that be an understatement, right? I mean, Peter's the one who turns around and says, you're not going to wash my feet, just give me a bath. If all it means, for me to show you that I want to be connected to you, then just go ahead and give me a big bath. And Jesus, I'm going to bathe you, Peter. I just want to wash your feet. Come on. And Peter's going, no, I'm very uncomfortable with this. All of them were. Peter just happened to be talking for the rest of them. All of them are uncomfortable with this. But Jesus washes their feet. Now, we've got already a little bit of discomfort in the room, right? Even when he's through and he's saying, I did this so that you'll learn that I need you to do this too. Not wash feet, but be servants. Everybody's just kind of uncomfortable. And then he turns around and he says, one of you guys is going to betray me tonight. Now they're starting to rock a little bit. Right? Do not think about Leonardo da Vinci's painting of the Last Supper where they're all sitting around the table. They're not. They're reclining at table. When it was a time of great celebration in the Jewish custom, it was to recline at table. You would get on your left elbow and allow your feet to be extended behind you, and you would eat with your right hand. They didn't have silverware. And you would eat with your right hand. And so they're reclining at table. And it's a way of celebrating the Passover, but it's also a way of great intimacy. And Jesus announces, one of you guys, as he's dipping bread in the bitter herbs, one of you guys is going to betray me. Who's that? The one I hand this bread to. I just want to point out real quick, because positioning is important. Peter, who's too far away, he's not in the envied position close to Jesus. He's too far away. John. Ask him who it is. Let's get some clarification. So that tells us John's right next to him on his right-hand side, because the text says John leans back. You're on your left elbow. John leans back. Jesus, who is it? Jesus already said, the one I'm going to hand this piece of bread to. Who is it, Jesus? One of you guys. He won't tell me, Peter. He won't tell me. And all the guys are kind of distracted, and Jesus hands the piece of bread this way. How do I know that? Text clearly says he hands it to Judas. You can't reach across the table. That's not manners. In Jesus' day, the left and the right hand were seats of honor. Guess what the most preferable seat was? The left. John's on the right. Judas is on the left in the seat of honor. One of you is going to betray me tonight. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? They're all distracted now. They're not even paying any attention to it. So that when he hands the bread to Judas, nobody sees it. It's like, wow, what's going on? Who's it going to be? Everybody's in disarray. The washing of feet, they were uncomfortable. Now they're just kind of swaying. They're rocking. They're trying to figure it out. And then he turns around and he says, hey, by the way, guys, if this is not enough, I'm leaving tonight and you won't see me again. What? Yeah. Tonight's it. This is it. And I'm going away and you can't come with me. Wait a minute. We've been doing this for 3.5 years and now you're telling me it's over? It's over? It's done? What? How is that? And now they're reeling. Now they're reeling. They were rocking. Now they're reeling. And before long, they're going to be rolling. And then he turns around and he says, Peter says, listen. You can't give me a bath. You wash my feet, but I'm not leaving your side. And then right at the end of chapter 13, Jesus says to Peter, before the cock crows, the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. And they are just falling out. Life has come undone for them. Judas left the room. At some point from the time he got the bread, John tells us he gets up and leaves. He's going to go do what he's going to do. So it's Jesus and the 11 that are left, and they are in chaos. I don't know if you've ever had and maybe this brings up too many bad memories. If you've had a holiday meal where everybody's around the table and then somebody says something, and the voice is just, and it's just this cacophony of sound as everybody's trying to talk over each other. And if you've ever had that, that's it. John chapter 13, by the time he gets to Peter and he says, you're going to deny me 3 times tonight, it is just this sound. And everything is in disarray and chaos. Now we're ready for chapter 14. Guys, you can hear him saying it. Jesus talking to his disciples. Guys, settle down. Calm down, guys. Don't let your hearts be so troubled. Relax. The plan's in place. I've been talking to you about the plan. You just haven't been keeping up. So let me tell you what's going to happen. Guys, come on, calm down. Listen to me. I'm going to my Father's house. Where are you going? I'm going to my Father's house. And when I go to my Father's house, I'm going to build rooms. And when the time's right, I'll come back and get you. The reason we miss this as a marriage passage is that we don't understand the Jewish custom of Jesus' day. In Jesus' day, when a young man wanted to marry a woman, usually it was an older man, usually in late 20s, early 30s, would marry a young woman, usually in her late teens, early 20s maybe, but late teens. An arrangement would be made between the man's father and the woman's father. And that arrangement would be that the two would marry on a specific day. And in many cases, the young man who was going to be married, the future husband, would give money or property to the young woman's family. Now, we've misunderstood that custom as well. That custom is not about payment, and it is not about property. That is, that the woman is a piece of property to be bought. That is not what's going on. It is the way that he, in a very physical, financial way, can compensate the family for the loss of their daughter who is part and parcel of making the family work. She's so valued that he wants to exchange, and I don't know what the right word, because it just keeps sounding like it's property, but he's trying to say, I value your daughter so much, I want to make sure that you're not going to miss her nearly as much. And the only way he can do that is to do it financially. It's one of the ways that he can prosper her family. So that exchange would take place. And then, this is the part that we miss, then that young couple would know they're going to get married. No surprises. They also knew that eventually it would be somewhere in the future. And that man would go to his father's house and begin building a room for his bride. And the young woman would go to her father's house, tell everybody that she was getting married, which they already knew, but that was the way it was done. She would say, I'm getting married. And she would begin at that moment packing her bags. And she was not going to take a whole lot of stuff. All she had, after all, for most of the young women, they were poor as we understood it. They would have a few clothes, very few, and a few personal items, very few. But she would get those together, and she would place those in what we would call a bag, or they didn't have suitcases, but something that would carry all of those, and she would put it by the front door, waiting for the day of her marriage. And for the next 12 to 18 months, did you hear that? 12 to 18 months, this young man is at his father's house building a room for his bride. Now, the conditions of that were these. Number one, he had to build it all by himself. He could not get help. Now, I'm not a builder. But I don't know how you get beams up into the ceiling by yourself. But he had to figure it out. It was not only tradition, it was his bride's room. So he would have to build this room. Number two, when he got it built, as he was finishing it up, there was no man cave. There was no place for him to hide. It was to be her room. So everything he was thinking about as he was building it was, this is where my bride's going to be. This is special. I'm going to decorate it for her. I'm going to make it special for her. This is where she's going to live with me and with my father. And it would take him 12 to 18 months to do all that. He had to build it himself. He had to pay for it by himself. He had to decorate it himself. Long before HGTV came along, there were decorators. And they were male. "12 to 18 months later, he would finish the room. And then he would call we call him today best man. It would be his really close friend. And he would tell his best man, his friend, I've finished the room. It's time for me to get married. And his friend would go through the community, and they would begin to collect all their friends and acquaintances and people who just like to celebrate. Because weddings are great celebration times, aren't they? Oh, well, nobody said yes to that. Okay. Didn't get an amen, didn't get yes, didn't get, like, well, I don't know. Okay. And they would get all this big group together, this entourage. And guess what time of the day? No matter what it was, when it was, guess what time of the day was customary and traditional for the groom to go get his bride? Go ahead, guess. What time? Say it loud. Noon? You got noon right. Just make it midnight. Make it midnight. In the darkest of darks. And the whole group, with their lanterns, would walk. It's a great time of celebration. And they would walk to the bride's house. And when they got to the bride's house, the best man would shout. And one of the other friends would blow a trumpet. And the announcement would be, your husband is here. And she would come running out of the house, picking up her bag as she came running out of the house. And she would join this group, and they would all walk together back to the Father's house. Jesus, where are you going? I'm going to my Father's house. And I'm going to build some rooms. And when the rooms are done, I'll come back and get you. And we will be forever together at the Father's house. Reeling, unbelieving, can't explain what's happening. These men are struggling in their walk with Jesus. I'm leaving you. You're going to betray me. You'll deny me 3 times. I've become your servant. And on it goes. And they don't know. And they're all upset. And Jesus says, I'm going to marry you. Just give it some time. We'll always be together. Be patient. When the world is pummeling you and chaos ensues, Jesus is building your room. And when the time's right, he'll come and get you. Isn't that what Paul talks about? 1 Thessalonians chapters 4 and 5, he says, when Jesus returns, what does he say? There's going to be a shout of the archangel. There'll be the blowing of the trumpet. Doesn't that sound like marriage language? Say yes. That's marriage language. We have this judgment scene, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have the judgment. I'm just saying we have this scene of, it's going to be, Jesus descending. We all come up. It's marriage. God started with marriage. When Jerusalem comes down, when the new Jerusalem comes down, it's a bride adorned for her husband. Revelation 22, Jesus says, the bride and the Spirit say all to come and be with me. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 2, I have done everything that I could. I've done everything that I could to prepare you as a virgin bride for Christ. We're getting married to Jesus. And he has promised to come back for us. He's at the Father's house right now. He's building us some rooms. And the day's going to come when we will hear the shout, we will hear the trumpet, and Jesus will say, come on, come and be my bride. Come and live with me. Come and stay with me forever. And we're going to rush out of the house. There'll be no hey, give me a minute to pack. No, 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 no. Let me tell you about that young lady. All that 12 to 18 months, she's packed on day one. She's waiting. What's happening for the next 12 to 18 months? Mama is talking to her about, here's what it means to be a wife. Here's what it means to be a mother. Here's what it means for you to be a good bride. Here's what it means. And she's telling her. And guess what? Every day, 12 to 18 months, all they're thinking about is, when will my groom come? And yes, we have to wait longer than 12 to 18 months, but let me tell you, every day we're waiting for the groom. Every day we're waiting for Jesus to come back from the Father's house so we can go and be with him. I remember the day I got married, Friday night, July the 10th, 1981. Did good, didn't I, Barbara? Pretty good. Friday night. I'm the one who chose July. I'm an idiot. One should never get married in the deep South in the middle of summer, especially if one is extremely hot-natured. I have pictures of us, and you can just see the sweat, and you know, it's just one of those. Yeah, it was a mistake on my part. But we chose July, and it was a great wedding. It really was. It wasn't the best wedding everybody has ever had. But it was in those days when all you had was cake and punch, you know, afterwards. And we did have peanuts, I think. We had a lot of people who came. It was both of us did not do the traditional stuff. While I did not see her in her wedding dress until she came down the aisle, we were both greeting people just in separate places, and we were talking to people as they were coming in. It was such a wonderful occasion. And I remember standing at the front, kind of like this, standing at the front and watching Barbara walk down the aisle toward me. And I wanted to be married, but man, it was like, oh, this is real. This is happening. We're going to do this. And I wanted to be married. Here's my point. I know what it's like to be on the male side as your bride approaches. I don't know what it's like to be on the woman's side as you approach your husband. You understand? I don't know what that looks like. So when Jesus says, I'm going to come back and you'll be the bride coming to the groom, I don't know what that's going to look like, but here's what I know. I don't want to miss it. I want to be there. And in the chaos of life, Jesus is telling us, be ready. I will be back. I got a lot of rooms to build. But when they're all finished, it'll be yours. It'll be decorated for you. It'll be special for you. And you don't want to miss that, do you? Don't you want to see your room? Don't you want to see your room? I want to see mine. Want a cigarette? No, I don't want a cigarette, but I have to speak more distinctly, obviously. But I'm Southern. We roll all these phrases together. Marriage matters to God. And it is the way that He has decided to help us to envision what it looks like when we're with Him forever. We want to go see our rooms. We want to go see what God has prepared for us. Jesus went to a cross, and that cross was built by Roman soldiers who had no idea that they were building the bridge to take care of our sin with God. They meant it for evil. They meant it for pain. They meant it for death. And God used it for life. And every chaotic event that happens in your world from this day forward, you're getting married. It's getting you ready. And Jesus is coming. He said He would. He's never broken a promise. He will always keep them. Let us be patient. Let us wait. Let us look forward to. Let us get our bags packed. Let us be ready for His return. And if you would like this morning to give your life to Jesus, if you would like this morning to be baptized, to say, I want life, not death. If you want to say this morning, I'm ready to be married. I'm ready. Then walk down one of these aisles and we'll help you and assist you in your becoming a faithful follower of Jesus today. If you need prayers, if there's a family unit that just wants to pray for harmony and peace, if you just want to pray for the chaos that's in your life, let that be known and we can pray with you. Let's stand and sing this song together.